Okay, welcome once again, and this is video number 3 in the order to consume foods for optimal efficiency is what we're talking about now. So, when prioritizing functionality over luxury in our diets, we recognize the bare truth early on. Sequence must win and defeat impulsiveness. An overtly impulsive person can never heal their body unless by miraculous standards. A well-organized sequence of consumption and reflection upon the effects of what's consumed will, for most, be the key to healing genetic disorders either in this lifetime or at least establishing proper traditional food habits that heal the disorder within the coming generations. And once again, this is a part of what I had written a while ago. So, the greatest barriers we face are foremost impatience and what we enjoy as satiation the most food-wise. Lack of patience leads to self-explanatory problems, such as giving up because we couldn't heal a 1,000-year genetic disease only in 1 year. Let's be realistic, because we got to be realistic. If something has persisted for 1,000 years as a bad habit, in any way, shape, or form, so being realistic, and I've personally been through it, the first year to 3 years will be mainly episodes of various detoxification process, which they will require a lot of self-discipline. Because a genetic disorder is foremost caused by an overload of harmful toxic substances to the body, either from chemical radiation or horrific dietary habits, forced or otherwise. The first order of business is to locate the primary anomalies in the physiological mainframe, which can only be achieved by initially detoxifying the body and observing the cellular responses closely. Every disease has a prime source, a central symptom that all other symptoms simply mask. So every other symptom, like they talk about Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and they talk about with muscular dystrophy. I've noticed that there are a lot of problems that are like smoke screens. So people with muscular dystrophy likely have all kinds of disorders. Also, on top of that, like they have trouble breathing. Most likely, they probably have like not asthmatic, but I I, I had trouble being warm in the cold. That was difficult. Because my heart wasn't pumping enough blood, and my body wasn't making enough red blood cells and things like that, because I didn't have enough brown adipose tissues, not nearly enough. My skin was I could clearly see that my skin wasn't fullness in there, stuff like that. It's just, but those were smoke screens, so I didn't know I had dystrophy. I didn't know, because those were just symptoms. So I was just being diagnosed from the overlay, but not from the underlie. Okay, and most genetic disorders are that exact. At all, any sickness is that way, because any kind of virus or dysfunction in the body is usually caused by pathogenic substances. Anyways, they always produce some formats of like a smoke screen that blinds you from it. You know. So the central symptom that all the other symptoms simply mask is like the leader of a rebellion in a country. All of the subordinates are a crowd, right? All the subordinates are a crowd around the leader, making it difficult to find that source of the situation. However, the issue with genetic disorders, as opposed to something like the common cold, is that the symptoms will persist until the disorder is fixed. Like a skinless foot couldn't help but collect harmful bacteria, and the only way to keep it as healthy as possible is to adopt habits which perpetually clean the foot inside and out, but especially inside. So applying this to genetic disorders, we need to have We need to have OCD and keeping the body within pristine inner cleanliness. There can be no junk food, period, point blank at all, because there comes, if you consume a useless substance, an increased need for antioxidant content to deal with the excess free radicals. And it's using too much of the body's energy. Plus, the biggest issue, it builds junk DNA. Junk food builds junk DNA. Everything we eat builds DNA. End of story. The skin the skin renews itself. So do the bones and every other cell in the body, including the organs. So if we renew them with a faulty nutrient, lacking substance, we will inevitably develop genetic disorders. Or in the case of chemical radioactive exposure, worsen the disorders. So the first thing we have to accept is we have to daily inner sanitization, which means in the first phase, restroom breaks will be more frequent than normal. And sometimes it'll only be bile we poop out. So we might excrete bile. Too much bile is unsafe unless you're very adept at your biological management. Because too much bile usually means you're release. You don't have enough. You may have low blood sugar at that point because the body will release excess cholesterol into the bile, and so it may not be that. It may not be acceptable. Minimal bile, approximately every 3 to 5 days, I have found acceptable for the common person based on what I've experienced. That's not medical information. That's what, if I was doing it normally, the body doesn't tend to react negatively to that. We want a slight increase in bile production because many genetic disorders have a common symptom: inability to fully digest food. This is not only harmful to the ability to gain proper nutrition, but also causes the organs to do extra work unnecessarily, which it has been scientifically proven that the harder the organs work, the shorter the individual's lifespan is. I want my lifespan to be as long as possible. Because this disorder is already shortened it, we don't want it to get even shorter. Establishing this first takes proper steps of habit and daily consumption. Throughout the day, we usually eat whatever we want based upon emotion until we're emotionally mature. Then we eat based upon necessity. Initially, this detoxification phase will likely be difficult because structure is limiting, yet limits lead to healing and freedom in this case. In the morning, always, for the most part, acidic fruits such as tomatoes, lemons, oranges, pineapple, and to pair that with something hydrating such as cucumber, zucchini, yellow squash, orange bell pepper, celery, jicama, and if you're not used to fasting in the mornings, then add some carb-containing fruits such as banana or plantains. One must add protein at one's own discretion, based upon the physical demand of one's daily activities. So, for those who may perform labor-based jobs, then avoid sticky substances like butters. If you can, stick to fast digesting foods like nuts and seeds in the natural form. their hemp seed, flaxseed, chia seed, sunflower seed, pumpkin seed, peanuts, pistachios. If performing more strenuous labor, rolled oats are a highly recommended bodybuilding food. And I do mean highly recommended. I use rolled oats to actually go all night and day. The first winter that I spent outside, actually, ironically, right before I learned I had dystrophy, and I wouldn't use a tent, and I wouldn't use a sleeping bag, and I didn't use a blanket. I used my clothes, and I used sit-ups and squats and push-ups to stay warm in the cold, even when it was snowing. And people were like, wow. But I was eating a massive amount of rolled oats, uh, pumpkin seeds and sunflower seeds, cayenne and onion. A lot of raw onion, not raw onion, but a lot. Yeah, it was raw. I wasn't cooking it. I was putting it in the cooked food afterwards, but it wasn't cooked directly. I was just chopping it up and then just throwing it in there and letting it emulsify. So that stuff works to definitely, it's a bodybuilding food. All of those are bodybuilding food. And yes, bodybuilding foods. And still pass through the digestive system. They'll still pass through the digestive system relatively quickly while providing long-term energy for the morning. We want the digestive system to be completely or almost completely fluid, because over time the body needs to develop the habit of time the detoxification release, so it's easier to manage for those who have demanding life schedules. You want to eventually have a good flow within the digestive system, so that when you need to hold your excrement for a short period of time, it doesn't back up in the system too much, since the ideal scenario to heal quickly, we'd want to release excrement immediately. The longer we hold it, it does things like create excess gas in the intestines, slow the blood flow, expand the organs, uh, expand the organs responsible for controlling the release of excrement, and other things that generally impede the healing process. Coffee or tea with breakfast is recommended, although if coffee only for caffeine purposes, I'd recommend transferring to green or black tea, or maybe even white tea, because it's kind of in the middle of green or the black tea, and eventually letting go of caffeine for a period to give the liver a break and the adrenals as well. Caffeine has been known to overstimulate the liver, which can interfere with its ability to filter impurities. This leads to stress upon the nervous system of the body, as these impurities may build up, and stress causes the release of cortisol, which leads to apoptosis of the cells in the area the cortisol is released. Apoptosis is cell death. Cortisol is foremost necessary and only usually in dealing with viral illness, and its main objective is to terminate infected cells. So its main objective is to terminate, bad cells. Unnecessary release of cortisol results in unnecessary cell death, which for which for which further strains the body, as my handwriting, oh my goodness, which further strains the body as it has to replace those cells. Even beyond that, if it taxes the adrenals, as they use adrenaline to help regulate, even beyond that, it taxes the adrenals, but as they use adrenaline to help regulate the body's reaction to stress, but they also produce cortisol. So it sends them into this seesaw effect that, if it continues, will lead to even thyroid issues. And the thyroid is linked to the production of most, if not all, the hormones in the body, including the serotonin system of the brain. A combination of these issues can lead to, it's the flies, I mean the mosquitoes, if these issues can lead to a perpetually anxious person. This is not good. Not for the healing or anything really. Uh, as serotonin is the relaxing, feel good hormone of the body, and less of it will affect all aspects of one's life, especially the healing process due to chronic stress and its effect on the blood's acidity levels. Studies have shown chronic stress can make one's blood toxic. So it can make your blood toxic, chronic stress. And if one is constantly exposed to stressful situations, it'd be good to do a regular blood detox using red clover, hibiscus, elderberry to be sure that we create an abundance of new blood cells that replace old toxic blood cells. In the case of genetic disorders, oftentimes the blood somehow is or becomes regularly contaminated anyway. So it's generally good practice overall for blood detoxing every maybe 3 to 5 days. So within 3 to 5 day break, your blood detox per at least once per 5 days. In the afternoons, you'll likely have guessed that a salad is preferred for the healing process with a proper, with a fiber-based fruit such as apples, plums, avocados. It may be prudent to add at least one citrulline-containing food, such as a watermelon, honeydew melon, cantaloupe, yellow squash, zucchini, cucumber, to the afternoon meal to refill the adrenals, as daily activities, whether one is aware of it or not, does cause minute levels of stress. Does cause the stress levels to fluctuate, even if only on a minute scale. It's good to regularly refill the adrenals with citrulline daily. This helps the body tremendously because even the regular chemical reactions of the body cause minute levels of stress through friction. Again, here for those who perform labor-intensive activities, apply protein as necessary. However, be aware that the consumption of vitamins, particularly CA and B6, are prime co-creators and maintainers of muscular integrity. So, still, unless the work is truly intensive, do your best to keep away from breads, grains, beans, rice until dinner time, because what we are doing here is training the body to release toxic waste that's been built up over time, and what we build up daily before the consumption of a truly filling substance. So the internal mechanism will always be moving, and is moving at its greatest capacity. This will lead to further digestion and absorption of nutrients, as well as higher stem cell activity, which is intrinsic in the genetic reparation process, as it speeds up genetic recovery and cellular renewal. Speeding up cellular renewal means the body gets the maximum amount of opportunities to try healing the genetic disorder. Also, the body is intelligent. So the anomalies that are created by the disorder will be more easily regulated by a greater stem cell count, as stem cells can perform another mosquito as stem cells as stem cells can perform functions such as replacing other damaged cells. Breakfast before dinner, I said breakfast. Breakfast before dinner time should have at least 3 to 4 mosquito. Oh my goodness, 3 to 4 gallons of water. Should have at least 3 to 4. That's 3 to 4. 3/4 of a gallon of water drank. We have to properly set the biological environments early on, so the body can already be within proper chemical metabolic function for the smoothest consumption, digestion, absorption, distribution, and excretion of our excretion of our prime genetic disorders, of our prime genetic builders. So dinners should include at least 2 fruits of highly electric nature, such as oranges, apples, a slice of watermelon. Any watery fruit will do, and grapes are the best I've found for this, as they are highly electric, loaded with vitamin C, and take up minimal space in the body, allowing one to more easily consume their main course dinner. I actually, at one point, was literally digesting all of my food in grape juice, like literally that I was eating grapes, like it's like at least like a bag of grapes after I had consumed my meal, because I was doing a bit of a training regimen at that point, and I didn't want to drink too much water because I was in the desert, so I needed to save my water strategically because I wasn't going to get the water every day at that point. I was storing up water, so I would have water for cooking, a little water for drinking after and before the foods, but mainly I was using fruits to digest my foods, and that does work if necessary, but it's not recommended for somebody with genetic disorder. It's not healthy unless you're going to really you have to know how to maintain yourself. But grapes are especially powerful for helping to build the body. I learned during that process. So the dinner ideally has to be gluten free. That means no wheat, barley, or rye, also known as durum semolina. This is because gluten slows the digestive system and open yeah. This is because gluten slows the digestive system and often causes spikes in blood sugar, which is harmful to the healing process on both accounts. Aside from that, I'd allow free reign over the dining preferences within the limits of avoiding slightly burned fried foods and deep fried foods, as they are generally unhealthy. So if someone likes to lightly fry their food, I would say just don't burn it. Just don't burn it, because once you burn it, like a light fry, like a saute, I'm not going to say anything about that. I enjoy a saute. When I went to, the only people I had let cook for me had for a period of time were the people I say at that yoga center. But other than that, I hadn't eaten the fry, but I ate that. Like they had slightly fried foods there that weren't burnt, and so I experienced that. And if they were even fried, but it appeared that some of those foods were lightly fried, and they were nice. So, but I don't know exactly how they cooked it, so I may have been wrong. But I only eat boiled foods. I don't fry anything, not even lightly. Uh, And I don't boil them entirely either. I just throw them in there and then let them become soft enough to be cooked enough that I've activate the cellular structure of whatever food need be, within the range of what it is for me to consume it properly. I don't cook it, so I don't kill any nutrients. I've mastered the ability to put a food to heat and not kill any of the nutrients. I get the full, anyways. Let's go back to here. Allow free reign. It's generally unhealthy. Going completely organic is highly recommended, as the metals from inorganic foods eventually have to be detoxified to naturally heal any genetic disorder, as those metals tend to clog arteries, degrade bone integrity, to which is detrimental an obstacle to our completely healing the journey, the completing the health journey. However, If finances truly, honestly do not permit for organic dieting in its entirety, then simply opting to eat all the fruits and vegetables organic or all the proteins organic is a good start. If neither, simply following the process does work. So if you can't go organic or eat anything organic at all, you just don't have the money. Like you started it the way I did. Like I was homeless. I didn't have any money. I had to build up skills that would get me more money. And I also had to use my energy, because through spirituality you learn that whatever you attract is based on your energy. I was using my meditations to stabilize my frequency so I would attract more beautiful people into my life who would support the need that I had to learn actually certain things that a lot of people would tend. Like it was a man, ironically, who he still to this day is not eating anywhere near as good as I am and is very sick. But it was him, and I took his advice about the soy lecithin. Right after he told me, I immediately cut it out of my diet. Immediately. And most people would look at a man like that, like, why would I listen to you for dietary advice? But I listen to him because I respect the person. I don't respect uh, the advice. I respect the person. So if a person comes to me with something, it's not about who they are. It's about the fact that they exist. And if we came across each other, as long as the interaction doesn't cause a conflict within my experience to where we need to distance ourselves, I listen. And he told me about soy lecithin, how that's not a good food. And after I stopped eating foods that had soy lecithin as an additive, I felt better. So I really say thank you. His name was Bear. When I was living in Sedona, homeless, his name was Bear, and he was a burly guy. He was big hair, but he helped me, and he's suffering from chronic illness, and I hope that he's doing better. But our dinner protein should be accompanied by a food containing iodine, such as kelp, which can be cooked into rice or other grains, and some vegetables high in vitamin C and A to support the protein foods. Green beans are excellent for this. They are high in vitamins A, C, potassium, magnesium, fiber, lysine. I mean, green beans. Green beans have been a champion of my life, whether I had a lot or a little money. Green beans, I gotta have me some green beans if I'm cooking. So yeah, that's got to be, so can be paired with brown rice, because brown rice has no lysine. It has very low lysine, very low lysine. So you have to eat a lot of brown rice to make that complete protein, or you would pair it with something like green beans or potatoes. So you can pair that with brown rice for the complete protein source. For those who may need to buy bulk due to financial constriction, potatoes are also excellent for this as well, with the addition of high B6 levels. However, green beans have chlorophyll and and are lower on the glycemic index due to less carbohydrates. Therefore, it depends on the person. However, I'd recommend both if one needs potatoes due to low blood glucose issues, as green beans are great overall. I would include green beans just overall. Great dinner protein choices include millets, which needs lysine. You have to pair it with something that has lysine, high in lysine. Quinoa is a complete protein. Black rice is a complete protein, but I would still add lysine because it's still rice, so we want to still make sure that we understand that it's still a form of rice. Buckwheat is a complete protein. It's a gluten-free fruit seed, so it's not even wheat. I don't know why they call it buckwheat. Amaranth is a complete protein. Teff is a complete protein. That's an African seed, and it's very powerful. Black beans are a complete protein. Mung beans, also known as green gram, You have to pair that with rice or other protein grains, but it's very powerful and very, very good in the genetic healing process. I've been using it. Edamame beans are extremely powerful for this as well, and they are a complete protein. Rolled oats are a complete protein. Red lentils, you have to pair them with rice or millet because they're high in lysine. But red lentils are especially good. Lentils in general are especially good. And another thing that I didn't put in this specific spot, but tempeh is a powerhouse. It has B6, B12, a lot of calcium, and it's a complete protein. So tempeh, it's probiotics as well. So it's all around awesome. Uh, Dinner supporting vegetables that are excellent include watercress is extremely nutrient dense. Spinach is high in vitamin C and A, also a complete protein, high in fiber. It's complete protein, supplementary protein. It's amazing. Carrots, celery, cilantro, parsley, dill weed,